Welcome to the High-Rise Exam Construction Workshop. I'm your chief architect for today, and we are laying down an absolute, unshakable academic foundation for your upcoming 2030 Cambridge AS-level Afrikaans language exams. We're zeroing in on those heavy-duty essay topics: education, social, and economic development. Now look, when you walk into that exam hall, examiners are looking for you to erect load-bearing arguments. They don't just want you throwing words onto a page and hoping they stick. Take two builders we see all the time, let's call them Alex and Sam. Alex panics and just stacks way too many unorganized factual bricks, while Sam focuses on a really flashy exterior design, lots of big vocabulary, but totally forgets the load-bearing sentence structures underneath. We want to avoid both of those traps, so let's look at exactly how to structure an essay that survives the most rigorous marker reviews.
Okay, let's dive into this. I wanted to hook you immediately with this massive, glowing red flag pulled straight from the principal examiner reports. Before we even start pouring the concrete for our essay, we have to look at where previous candidate structures have completely collapsed. Examiners are literally shouting from the rooftops here. Candidates consistently confuse key terminology. Think about it for a second. If you're building a massive high-rise and you confuse a steel support beam with, say, drywall, the whole thing comes crashing down, right? It's the exact same thing in the context of education, social, and economic development. You simply cannot afford to use terms loosely. You absolutely must define your terms clearly before you deploy them in your extended responses. Doing this establishes your authority right out of the gate.
So, to demystify the grading rubric and get our blueprint ready, here is our logical schematic for today. First, core assessment principles. Second, the procedural framework. Third, critical analysis. And finally, the top examiner warnings.
All right, on to Section 1, Core Assessment Principles. Let's establish the foundational academic benchmark for these 2030 essays. And this brilliantly illustrates the Cambridge standard. Examiners heavily, and I mean heavily, prioritize analytical depth over superficial breadth. This is where we really need to stress test our framework. You have to balance your assessment objectives, AO1, AO2, and AO3, to ensure your text blocks survive review. Think back to our builder Alex, right? The one who just memorizes 100 different statistics about economic development in South Africa and scatters them like unorganized factual bricks across the page. Examiners don't want that. They want you to take just 2 or 3 incredibly strong, well-chosen pieces of evidence. Say, focusing specifically on how rural education deficits directly impact youth unemployment rates and weld them into a profound, tightly connected argument. They want load-bearing, evidence-based reasoning where literally every single sentence serves a structural purpose.
To achieve that kind of depth, top-performing students master these fundamental principles. You need a connected, conceptual understanding. You've got to show that your reasoning is logical, structured, and systematic. And crucially, this is the big one. Your understanding must be transferable to unfamiliar contexts. This proves to the marker that you haven't just memorized a textbook response. It shows you actually understand the mechanics of social and economic development well enough to apply those concepts to a brand new scenario presented on exam day. You're proving that you can think critically, like a true academic engineer.
Moving to Section 2, the procedural framework. Now that we know examiners want that analytical depth, let's look at the exact step-by-step methodology to actually build it.
Now, you might be wondering, how do you tackle an unfamiliar exam context? This is the ultimate stress test. You turn over the paper, and the stimulus material regarding an educational policy or a socioeconomic trend is something you have literally never seen before. Now, before we answer that, site inspection. To fortify your academic foundations and get weekly structural grade upgrades, make sure you subscribe to Ace the Exams at the handle @AceTheExams right now, and turn on all notifications. Okay, resume build. So, you hit an unexpected structural crack mid-paragraph? Panic is the enemy of structure. You cannot rely on pre-memorized essays here. You need a reliable, repeatable mechanism, like the PO matrix point, evidence, explanation link, to weld your evidence to your analysis flawlessly and process that unexpected data.
Let's map out our structural skeleton right here on the grid. This is the standardized sequence for systematically processing data in the Afrikaans 8679 syllabus. Step 1. Deconstruct the question. What is it actually asking you to build? Step 2. Extract relevant data from the stimulus material. Go find your building materials. Step 3. Select your analytical framework. Step 4. Execute your analysis with clear, sharp notation. Step 5. Verify your results. Ask yourself, does this actually make sense logically? And finally, Step 6. Present your argument using the correct terminology. If you follow these exact steps, I promise you, you will never freeze up when faced with a complex prompt.
So, the crucial point here is this. Examiners award what we can think of as method marks. The process and showing your clear working matter just as much as the final conclusion you reach. It's not just about guessing the right answer. It's about showing your systematic processing, your data interpretation, and your clear annotations. The examiner wants to see the blueprint of your mind. If you show them the logical steps you took to reach your conclusion, your academic foundations are incredibly fortified, and you secure marks even if your final conclusion is slightly off-center.
Section 3, Critical Analysis. This is where we hit those higher-order assessment objectives and run quality control on our evidence.
Let's do a live audience diagnostic right now. I want you to imagine a complex blueprint graph or source excerpt on the screen, and you have a 60-second visual countdown timer to extract the primary metric. Time's up. How do you evaluate it? This definition right here is everything. Critical analysis is evaluating evidence quality by identifying limitations, underlying assumptions, and alternative interpretations. Top-scoring candidates do not blindly accept the premise of the prompt. No way. They actively stress test it. They ask, what is this source assuming? What are the limitations of this data on economic development? Is there an alternate way to view this social issue? If you want those top-tier grades, you have to show the examiner you can test the structural integrity of the materials you are given. The absolute best way to implement that critical analysis is through this deconstruct, solve, evaluate loop. Time for interactive test number 2, identify the flaw. When looking at a sample student answer that drops massive marks, the structural gap is usually right here. They failed to loop. You have to identify the given information, break the complex issue into logical steps, solve systematically, and then, here's the critical, load-bearing part, you must check for reasonableness and make justified recommendations. This loop is your ultimate tool for handling multi-layered social and economic issues. You aren't just describing a problem, you are breaking it down, analyzing it, and suggesting an evidence-based way forward.
And finally, Section 4, Examiner Warnings. Let's head into our final build inspection and look at the common structural failures.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it maps the top 3 structural mistakes directly to your timeline of planning, writing, and formatting. First, in planning, candidates choose the wrong approach for the context. They select a framework that simply doesn't fit the terrain. Second, while writing, there is a severe lack of specificity. Students completely ignore the given scenario and write broadly, forgetting that their points must be directly applied to the exact data provided in the prompt. And third, right at the end of the timeline is poor presentation. You do all the hard work, but you lose marks because you used incorrect formats, missed required headings, or just totally forgot to verify your terminology. Let's make sure our final response paragraph is flawless.
To help you avoid that lack of specificity, I want to give you the 3 rules of sentence engineering. It's a quick memory hack directly tied to the 2030 syllabus. ESE factors: educational, social, and economic. Whenever you are building your essay, stop mid-sentence and ask yourself, have I linked this argument back to the educational impact, the social impact, the economic impact? If you ensure that your load-bearing arguments always connect back to these 3 core pillars, your essay will remain firmly grounded and totally unshakable.
I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought to stress test your own work. If examiners truly value analytical depth over superficial breadth, what underlying assumption in your last practice essay did you just blindly accept and fail to challenge? Go back, look at your drafts, and start identifying those structural gaps. Keep building strong arguments and keep systematically processing those past papers. Before you go, make sure you subscribe to AC Exams at AC Exams, click that notification bell, and leave a comment down below with your specific subject and level so we know what to build next. See you in the next workshop.